We turn our focus now to agriculture, and today on the program our conversation is going to be on the untapped opportunities and potentials that small and medium enterprises have not really tapped into in the agriculture sector. And I'm being joined on the program by an agri-information broker and consultant, African farmer Mogaji. Mr. Mogaji, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, agriculture, as it is a money spinner. It's a revenue earner.
True.
Anywhere in the world. And here in Nigeria, once upon a time, it used to be, and still is, but not as much as it used to be, a revenue earner and a money spinner for us.
Yeah.
And lately, we've noticed that the sector has witnessed massive transformation. But there's still this argument that the sector still has untapped potentials.
Yes, I agree with you. What's happening in the industry is we've had a lot of publicity from the ministry and the Minister of Agriculture, but the information has not really trickled down to the private sector. When I say private sector, not the investors, so to speak now, on how to harness the opportunities being created by the Ministry of Agriculture.
Mr. Mogaji, let me just interrupt you here just before we continue. When you say trickle down, the Ministry of Agriculture, and I'm not holding brief for them, but we know that there's been a massive campaign. There's been seminars, there's been forums, there have been summits and the rest of it, because last year there was the 19th Nigerian Economic Summit that focused primarily on agriculture. And we saw a lot of key players from the private sector there at the summit. So if the ministry has ensured that as much as possible, the sector is there in the face of everybody, what do you actually mean when you say information has not trickled down?
Yes, the how to. There's a difference between having information about what is attainable and obtainable, and there's a difference in how do I get into the industry. Take, for instance, the cassava revolution, which is a very good one from the ministry. Now, the how. Now, you find a lot of youths and people in the private sector, maybe employees, trying to get into the industry to cash in the opportunity. Now, the how. Take, for instance, letting people aware that, take, for instance, the cassava stems, which is the stick that you plant, is actually more lucrative than even producing the cassava itself. So if you're talking to someone who has maybe 500,000, 1 million, 200,000 to invest, having that money as the only investment, you should be talking to the person going into cassava stem multiplication. While the big players are looking for stems all over the nation, somebody needs to interface. And apart from that, you have rural farmers having cassava tubers and not knowing where to sell, and they're producing so much. So you need to encourage some people also to go into the cassava tuber marketing. The how, where do they get it? How do they harness these opportunities? What do they need to know about the transportation? These are information that is not trickling down to the people who want to engage in it, apart from the big players.
Mr. Mogaji, if I get you right, you're talking about the value chain now.
Value chain, yes.
Yes, so how can players now improve the value chain and increase productivity in the sector?
Good. One thing is the Ministry of Agriculture needs to make information more available. Yes, the big picture is being painted, which is good, which is their primary focus. But over the years, because of the extension service not available, if you get to most of the ministries of agriculture, either state or federal, at local government, you don't have information that you can take to the bank. When I mean take to the bank, I mean practical. Take, for instance, if I want to appeal to you to go into tomato production now, I'll be telling you something like this. I'll be saying that, do you know that tomatoes in February, March, a basket of 40, 50 kilo goes for about 2,000 naira. And if you're harvesting such tomatoes in May, June, it will be sold for a minimum of 15,000 naira. Now, that information would catch your fancy. You would begin to do the calculation and find out, oh, why do I need to get my tomatoes to the market in February, March, while I can get over 500% in May, June? The statistics I just gave you has been there for the last 8 years that some of us have been cashing in on it. So the Naira and Kobo aspect of this production is what people don't really have access to.
Now, you already mentioned the cassava revolution. But could you still identify some of those other potentials, that small and medium enterprises, can actually tap into?
Yes. Now, Gary, which is a popular staple food around
And
here.
it's a byproduct of cassava.
Byproduct of cassava. Now, the rural areas produce Gary on a commercial scale. When I mean commercial, I mean if you add it up together. But they are ripped off by the middlemen. And we have a lot of unemployment amongst the youths. And, they have the strength and they have the zeal. So we need to be talking to them about buying Gary from the suburbs, actually opening them up to say this is available here, and so they can cash in on it. Some of us do a bit of cassava also. Take, for instance, you buy like a 20 kg of Gary in the suburbs. Take, for instance, Oyo State. You buy it at 1,500 naira. In Lagos, it's sold for 3,500 naira. So what that means is that the market is there. In 2011, the price of cassava, 3 ton of cassava, dropped to 5,000 naira in areas like Shekweteri in Shaki in Oyo State, Southwest. Now, and the price of Gari did not drop in the urban areas. It used to be sold for about 50,000 for a 3-ton vehicle. Now it was sold for 5,000. That's bad. We are in the field. Now, the price of Gari did not drop. All the people in the private sector need to know that, there is an opportunity here. So we need to talk about the opportunities in Naira and Kobo than talk about the big picture.
But even with the opportunities, there are definitely risks. Now, another thing let's talk about the risk just before we get to this other. We're talking about the opportunities. Everybody's seen the opportunities. Like you just mentioned, there was a time it crashed so much that everybody should have flooded the market, and we didn't see that. And that's because they were weighing in on the risks. So the risks are so much that it keeps these potential investors away.
Well, in every business, there's a risk.
But it depends on how much the risk is before you go into the business.
When you're in production, the risk is higher. When you're stepping into the value chain, the risk is lower. Now, the only risk you stand to engage into or come across in getting into the value chain is mostly transportation. Mostly transportation. However, there are established transport businesses in the rural environment. When you get to the urban area, it's a different dynamics from the rural areas. Okay. So you can actually calculate your profit before you say that, okay, this is what I can do. It's actually meant for me. So apart from transportation, people talk about bad roads. But the bad roads, most of the roads now, this administration, I must give it to President Ebele, the roads are being patched up. So it's making access, especially in the Southwest, more accessible. So it's a thing of old. People need to know about what's happening now, not what used to be. It's getting better accessing these communities than, the main road. When you go off the road, you can have a bit of challenge, but the main roads that get there, things are really getting better. Okay,
so that's on the infrastructure aspect now. Now there's this, the other part I wanted to ask you. We have a lot of, in Nigerian parlances, follow. You start a cassava business.
Yes.
It's moving. I decide I want to start a cassava business as well. Okay. But maybe I do not understand the dynamics of being in that business. But I'm into it anyway because you're making so much money. And so that's what we have right now. With a lot of small, medium enterprises, everybody does the follow syndrome. They don't totally understand the business before they go into it. So is that the reason why we don't have so much SMEs, looking at the other potentials on the other aspects of agriculture? Because we don't just have crop farming. We have livestock as well. We have fish farming and so many other aspects of agriculture.
Yes, and what you just explained, I call it Google farming.
Google farming.
Yes, we have a lot of Google farmers in Nigeria now, where they go on the internet, they access the information, and they forget that what they are doing outside the country mostly is precision farming, where you have the equipment, the quality of fertilizers, the quality of input is good. So they copy and paste. That's one of the reasons the private sector have challenges in the industry. Yes, the follow thing, yes. Now, most people don't pay the price of educating themselves before getting into the agricultural industry. There's this mindset generally, and you find big players also losing their money in this. I've seen a lot in 18 years. Now, you see them there's this belief that is agriculture. If a rural farmer can do it, why can't I do it?
Exactly.
But most of research has it. Over 70% of the private sector lose their money in the agriculture sector. And why is that? Because you have excelled in another industry does not automatically mean you will excel in agriculture. Agriculture is more nature dependent, and other factors, most of the factors is not within your control. So it's for you to get access to the right information, look for it beyond internet and beyond the Ministry of Agriculture can give you the basics. You need to get to the root and find out what's happening. Now, one other thing the private sector does is they set up processing outfits very far from the raw material. So the cost incurred in getting products to the processing outfits make the cost of production higher. While, like today, now we find more private sector people now going into the villages, setting up in the environment where they would have access to the raw material. So they have gotten it right, but those people who are getting it right also had gotten it wrong at a point in time, and they learned from that experience and they are getting it.
But then